to start it. So hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Vanessa Brooks. I am the development and membership and database coordinator at the Land Trust. We're happy you're here. If you haven't heard about Lunch and Learns, we do them about once a month on Wednesdays. We just have speakers that come and share some of their knowledge about different subjects. It's always free. This is our last one for a few months. We're going to take August off and then hopefully pick them back up in September. But today we are partnering with Santa Barbara Channelkeeper. So in case you don't know who they are, they're a local nonprofit that's dedicated to protecting and restoring the Santa Barbara Channel and its watersheds. So they primarily work through science-based advocacy and education and field work just to do that. So I want to go ahead and introduce Molly Troup. She is their, she's been working with Channelkeeper since 2018 and has a master's in environmental science from UCSB Bren School. And we're just really happy to have you here. So thank you, Molly, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great, thanks so much. All right, and here we go. 1 second.
Hi, everybody. This is Bruce. I just tuned in. Are there only 6 of us here?
I think that's correct, Bruce. Hi, it's Molly.
Molly, you deserve a much bigger audience. Welcome. I hope this meager output on our point is attributable to I don't know what, it being the wrong time of week or whatever, but we're very happy to have you. Thank you for the time.
There's more than 6 people here, Bruce.
Are there? Oh, good.
Yeah. You just have to scroll down on the little side view.
Okay.
Don't you worry, we wouldn't do Molly wrong like that.
Great. Well, thank you, Bruce. And thank you, Land Trust folks, for inviting me here today. And thanks to everyone who's tuned in for spending your lunchtime with me today to talk about the connection between your street and the ocean, and in the context of plastic. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk with you today about this, because I'm really passionate about this topic, and I'm passionate about reducing the use of plastic and ultimately reducing plastic in our environment. So just a little about me. I've been picking up trash for as long as I can remember. I have these memories of walking down my rural dirt road in New Hampshire with my dad doing trash cleanups as a kid. And now as an adult, I get to work on these issues by managing our community cleanup program, conducting education and outreach, and also working on advocacy. I've called the presentation today, "The Ocean Begins on Your Street." And I took this tagline from a County of Santa Barbara flyer because I really like it, and it is true. We all live in a watershed, and ultimately the ocean is the receiving body of water for everything that we do here on land. And in Santa Barbara and other coastal communities, we get to see this connection quite easily. So we're going to talk about how clean creeks, healthy watersheds, and oceans are impacted by what happens on land. And I want to leave you with some positive actions that you can take to reduce your plastic use, which will ultimately have a positive impact on our environment. Let's see, I can't advance this slide. There we go. So before we jump in, I want to wish everyone a happy plastic-free July. This talk is very timely. We have another 12 days left of the month, including today, and not to mention the rest of the year, because really it's never too late to get started. And so I hope you will join us and take the challenge. Plastic-free July is a global movement, and it was started by a single woman in Australia in 2011. And since that time, it's reached over 100 million participants in 190 countries. So I encourage you to check out the website. There's a lot of great tips and actions to take to get started. And I'm just curious, let's see if I can figure this out. If anyone here has actually heard of Plastic Free July or taken the challenge.
No.
No? Okay, great.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it either, but I'm doing it right now, as of right now.
Excellent, great. Well,
Same.
glad to hear it. Okay. All right, so Vanessa did give a nice little overview about Channelkeeper and what our mission is, which is to protect and restore the Santa Barbara Channel through science-based advocacy, education, outreach, and field work. And we were founded as a program of the Environmental Defense Center in 1999, became an independent 501c3 in 2001. We have a small but mighty staff of 6 people, 15-member board of directors, which Bruce is part of, and our work, which is supported by over 350 volunteers a year. As I mentioned, we have 4 main prongs of work, and our advocacy efforts are focused on cleaning up pollution that threatens the health of our watersheds, our beaches, wetlands, and of course, the Santa Barbara Channel. And the work that we do includes addressing polluted runoff, sewage issues, agricultural operations, oil and gas production, large municipal and industrial discharges, and the topic of today, which is plastic pollution reduction. So to set this stage, the issue of plastic is global, as we all know, and it's not only ubiquitous in our environment, but it's found in the most remote regions as well, which is really troubling. On the top left of the screen is a depiction of some garbage patches, which essentially is these areas of plastic soup in the ocean. They're huge. They're at least the size of Texas. There's around 5 of them. And these are areas that plastic is just converging in the ocean and continuing to break down into smaller and smaller bits. On the top right of the screen is a photograph from Antarctica. And just recently in December of last year, there was a study published that indicated at 19 different areas across the Ross Island region, microplastics were found in all 19 samples that were taken. On the bottom left of the screen is a photograph of plastic found on the deepest dive in human history in 2019. This is a picture in the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean, 7 miles deep, and that's a plastic bag that you're looking at. On the bottom right of the screen is Arctic ice. There's been studies of Arctic ice cores finding over 17 different types of plastic in the cores at 2 to 3 times higher concentrations than previously thought. So with all this plastic throughout our environment, it's really not surprising the impacts it's having on animal species. And the 2 main ways are entanglement and ingestion. These are visualizations showing numbers of species that are impacted in these ways and through different studies across time. And there's hundreds of species that are impacted. Additionally, plastic leaches toxic chemicals into the water and is a breeding ground for bacteria, and it can destroy habitat by attaching to vegetation and just and smothering it. Taking a step further, we're not just hearing about plastics impacting the environment and animals in the environment, but people now. So a 2019 study in Australia has estimated that each of us, that we consume a credit card size of microplastics each week. Studies have been published recently finding microplastics in human stool samples, in human blood, in the lungs of cadavers, and recently in living human lung tissue. And so while we don't know the impacts of all this plastic just yet, we do know many plastics are endocrine disruptors, and most likely consuming all this microplastic is definitely not good for us. So why is this such a problem? a couple of reasons. The sheer amount of plastic that is produced and the challenges associated with its disposal. The US generates 42 million metric tons of plastic waste per year. That's a mind-boggling amount. And that number is projected to increase, as shown in the graph on the left. And in the right, we're looking at what happens to plastic. Essentially, numbers suggest that only 8% of plastic is recycled. And a study, more recent study, that number dropped to 5% last year.
Okay.
So we know that we produce a lot of it. We don't have adequate systems to manage the waste, and that we're finding plastic everywhere we look. And how is that so? Well, because we live in watersheds, and essentially there are all these pathways to the ocean, and primarily rivers, inland runoff, and stormwater. The larger photo or picture on the screen depicts various different pathways that plastic can be transported from land to the ocean. And in the left, we're looking at a very polluted river in Indonesia. There's a research group at UCSB called the Benioff group, and they're looking at figuring out ways to help the most polluted rivers across the world address these plastic problems. I'd like to bring it a little bit more local and look at a couple examples in our watersheds. So here is San Pedro Creek. This creek runs along Patterson Avenue and in Goleta. That top left photograph is one of our all-star volunteers who participates in our Watershed Brigade cleanup program, and with tons of trash. She was conducting regular trash cleanups in this creek bed last year in the fall before the rainy season came, and regularly picking up just, hundreds of pounds of trash from that area. The bottom two photos show essentially near to the same area that this volunteer was standing in. This was a March 28th, earlier this year, just after one rain event. And you can see the creek there has come alive and is a conduit. All of that water is flowing through what was once the dry creek bed, and which ends up in the Goleta Slough and out into the Pacific Ocean. So the photographs on the right are showing that, also on that March 28th day. And in Santa Barbara, we have Mission Creek. Mission Creek is our main creek that flows from the Santa Ynez Mountains through the city to our waterfront and the Pacific Ocean. In October of last year, we organized a cleanup and targeted 8 different locations along Mission Creek. Many of the creek areas do end up dry throughout the year before we get any rain. And you can see the picture next to it. The creek has come alive. Later in October, I believe it was the 25th, we had that first rain event. The group of photos on the right show Mission Creek at East Beach, where the creek connects to the Pacific Ocean there. And this was also that March 28th rain event I mentioned earlier on the previous slide. And unfortunately, despite as many cleanups as we can do, we end up with just so much trash on the beach after a rain event. So it's my goal to organize a some post-storm cleanup responses, just to get more folks out there, because those are the times we really need people to conduct cleanups on the beach. And the reason for this also has to do with our storm drain system. So this is a map of the storm drains in the Santa Barbara city of Santa Barbara, excuse me. And these are all catch basins and drop inlets, and they basically work to get water off the street to prevent flooding and other impacts to infrastructure. And they're mostly connected to creeks and the regular waterways that end up into the ocean. So for a small city, just curious if anyone has any idea how many storm drains that we have. in the city? Go ahead and shout it out if you know it or want to take a guess.
Lots.
Lots. We have 1,500 is the estimate. So yeah, lots. And just here are a few examples. Occasionally on morning walks, I'll do cleanups around my neighborhood and regularly pick up a bucket full of trash. All of that trash that isn't swept up by the street sweepers or picked up can end up flowing down a storm drain when we get these big rain events like you see in the right here. And these storm drains don't funnel water to our water treatment plant. They basically go directly to the ocean, which is why most of them you'll see, or you should see, these little symbols that say no dumping, drains to the ocean. So we have lots of waste. We don't have good management of all of that waste, and we have lots of connections to our ocean. There are many different estimates, but one number is that about 8 million metric tons of plastic waste enters the ocean each year. So that's a lot of waste. It's hard to wrap your head around. It's supposed to, or estimated to increase to 53 million metric tons by 2030. And that is essentially a garbage truck per minute. So that's a lot of waste. This photograph on the right is a picture of approximately, I believe, 500 pounds of trash that we picked up off of Santa Cruz Island, Yellowbanks Beach. This was earlier this year in February. Channelkeeper worked with a number of other groups and volunteers to go out there and pick up trash. Here are some more photos exemplifying the trash that we find out there. And most of it you can tell is trash that has come from the mainland, because there's just not that many visitors out there. I mean, we find Starbucks cups and Ugg boots and hair or combs and just all kinds of things. So we conduct cleanups regularly out there and often find a lot of trash that has come from the mainland. So that's a really big problem, but what can we do about this? Moving to actions. So there's lots of personal actions you can take to refuse, reduce, reuse, and as a last resort, try to recycle. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. There are, reusable, all kinds of reusable things you can do. Use your own shopping bag and refuse plastic cutlery. Try and keep some extras in your bag or in your car with you. A few items that I've recently switched over to include bar shampoos instead of a plastic bottle with a liquid shampoo. There are hand soap tablets, again, replacing bottles with liquid hand soap. So those are a couple of my favorites. I'm curious, I want to open it up here. If anyone else has made any changes or swapped out any items recently that they're really excited about.
I'm with you. I'm
Toothbrush.
Yeah, toothbrush.
Sorry, yeah. And I was at the dentist yesterday and I was just thinking about how amazingly wasteful the whole dental industry is.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, from dental floss to toothpaste to toothbrushes, water usage is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed. Anyone else?
I'm loving the shampoo bars and conditioner bars too.
Yeah.
Actually, because I remember being a kid and it's like, if you use bar soap on your hair, it's just no good.
Yeah.
But they've come so far. And also like moisturizer bars, which is cool.
I haven't seen those.
Yeah. So I've seen those crop up and I've used one and they're pretty great. And then something else that I really like is I've started seeing like dish soap bars. But they've been doing that in France for a long time.
Yeah.
Olive oil. So, it's just like,
relate to the game here.
yeah, exactly.
I've taken this whole shampoo thing one step farther, and You
Cut your hair off, Doris. Take one
Nice.
for the team
recommend that for the
there.
rest of you. The rest
There
of you,
you
I
go.
would encourage full participation on that, but with bars, not bars.
Laundry soap sheets are good too.
Yeah.
Cool.
I just saw that there's a new thing. I just saw it advertised. I haven't gotten it yet. Is rather than toothpaste, they have these little tablets that come in a cardboard box, and then you just take the tablet and use that to brush your teeth. That's kind of intriguing. And I think, even if you can't get everything going at once, it's good just to try things like, have a refillable bottle, and just don't buy a bunch of little bottles, but try to think about every little way you can do this, because sometimes it's very hard to go all at once. But I think little by little, these tips are very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's just more options available, which really help as well. So go ahead, Sally.
Oh, sorry. I'm a mad canning person, and I have so many mason jars. And when I give a lot of food to my daughter and her family, and I'm unfortunately addicted to Ziplocs, but I'm trying to convert to giving her stuff in mason jars. And then when I give mason jars full of jam to friends, I'm encouraging them that they get refills if they return them.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
So I have tons and tons of mason jars.
Great.
And, I also, it's not a good time to bring it up, but I'm really concerned. I live in the North County, and I'm really concerned with the increase in agricultural plastic use and how much of things like irrigation tape, vine ties, hoop houses, how much of that is even recyclable? I don't know.
Yeah. My guess is not much.
Well, it's literally acres.
Yeah.
It's from a satellite, you would see plastic. Crazy.
All right. Well, great. I'm going to move on here. Great ideas. And I love to hear everyone's efforts in this process. Oops. Let's see. There we go. So I wanted to touch on recycling. There are, small amounts of materials that are recycled, about 5%, we've heard from the latest study. And Channelkeeper has supported a film recycling program in the past that was very popular and did divert over 15,000 of that thin film plastic from the landfill. But I really love this quote from Penny: "This best piece of single-use plastic is the one not used." And that's because often these kinds of programs are just really not sustainable. Currently, we can't bring this material down to Trex, which is the company that was taking it, because of trucking issues and the cost of fuel. So this just exemplifies really we can't recycle our way out of this issue. And another action I'd like to highlight are conducting cleanups and getting involved. I want to talk a little bit about Santa Barbara Channelkeeper's cleanup program, which is called the Watershed Brigade. And we've always done cleanups and supported community cleanups, but this is our new evolution of the program. And we have a number of different ways to participate. Essentially, we have a monthly challenge every month in which we encourage folks to do cleanups independently and report their results back to us through our Facebook pages or Instagram page or a Google Sheet. So anyway, you want to reach out to us, and you get put into a drawing to win a prize, and we give prizes away every single month. So that's an ongoing cleanup program. Another way to get involved with this program is through a monthly event. We have an event, one event per month. Some are in person in big groups. We've done big lobster trap cleanups or microplastic cleanups on West Beach, big stretches of beach cleanups with lots of folks. We've also done some dispersed cleanups. I mentioned our Mission Creek cleanup earlier, where we divided and conquered. Essentially, we spread out to 8 different sites along the creek and cleaned up trash. So this program's been really popular. We've had over 1,000 people participate and have removed over 15,000 pounds of trash and 753 cleanups. So cumulatively, so since 2020. And here I'd like to highlight one of the other positive impacts of the Watershed Brigade is connecting volunteers. Through our social media pages, we've had folks post about trash hotspots, as this post here, highlighting Las Vegas Creek in Goleta. You see lots of trash under that bridge there. And we had another volunteer in need of some community service hours, and she went out to that site and cleaned up all of that trash and posted about it. So that was a great example of the connections that our social media platforms are allowing folks to make. So I encourage you to check it out. Check out our Facebook page and our Instagram page and get involved. Here are some close-up photographs of trash that we picked up off of West Beach, which is Channelkeeper's adopted beach. And this is one of the beaches we most regularly conduct cleanups on. We still find lots of plastic bits, styrofoam bits, cigarette butts, and all kinds of drink bottles and things like that. So even on a beach that looks fairly clean from a distance, once you get in close and personal, you end up finding a whole lot of trash there. And so while individual actions, I think, are super important, there are additional actions that really need to move, that are needed to move the needle here, which includes policy changes at all levels. And so the Community Environmental Center, Santa Barbara Channelkeeper, has successfully advocated for 7 regional laws, which have reduced distribution of single-use plastics over the years. And we continue to work on this issue. Our current effort includes supporting Goleta through their expanded polystyrene foam ban, which will be reviewed by the City Council for consideration sometime this summer. So if you live in the city of Goleta, we encourage you to keep an eye out for opportunities to weigh in on that policy change. On the statewide front, I want to highlight a really exciting bill that was just passed. Let's see, Senate Bill 54. So this was supposed to be a ballot initiative that you would have had an opportunity to vote on in November. However, the plastic industry representatives and advocacy groups wanted to address this by legislation, and the ballot initiative brought all of the right people to the negotiating table, which led to a deal being struck. And Governor Gavin Newsom signed this bill on June 30th. So this is a really, really exciting step forward in a really good direction. And it represents a significant overhaul of California's plastic and packaging recycling policy. And there's a lot of components to this bill, but a few of the highlights include a 25% source reduction goal for single-use packaging production by 2030 too. A requirement of at least 65% of plastic sold, distributed, and imported in California needs to be recyclable. And also a requirement that the industry contributes to a $5 billion of environmental mitigation funding that will go toward restoration and cleanup. So there's a lot of good things in this bill and a lot of work to still be done as the regulations are being written to implement it. At the federal level, there is also another bill to accomplish some similar work. It's called the Break Free from Plastics Act, and it was introduced in 2021. It has a lot of elements that try and get at the producer responsibility and phasing out of certain single-use plastics that just can't be recycled, moratoriums on new and expanded production facilities, and a whole lot more. This bill is currently stalled, even though it has 128 co-sponsors in the House and 15 in the Senate. But we still need folks to reach out to the representatives and support the bill and hopefully get it moving again. The photo on the right, excuse me, on the left is a photograph outside of Dianne Feinstein's office. I was able to speak with her legislative aide on the Waterkeeper at the Waterkeeper conference in June earlier this year, just to talk about these kinds of efforts and our support of them. So that was pretty exciting. And just a reminder that plastic pollution is really a part of the climate change industry. And we've mostly talked about the issues with the end products, the use and the disposal, but there's also production and extraction and climate change impacts occur at all levels, all stages of plastic. So it's a really important issue that we really need to continue to work on. And action, of course, I think is an antidote to these big, overwhelming problems that just seem too big to solve alone. So I encourage you to not to get overwhelmed and to take actions that you take on actions that you can manage. Small steps, get involved in cleanup groups or do your own cleanups on your own walks and things like that. And yeah, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters to create many ripples. I really like that quote and think it is a good one for this topic. So that is all I have for you today. Thanks for joining me on your lunch hour and taking the time to have a conversation about this topic for Plastic-Free July. And to open it up for any questions or just a continued discussion or conversation.